Hey, welcome along to another video edition of Mark's Mailbox. You know how this works. We take questions from Mark Steyn Club members live around the planet in audio, but we always have some we don't get to, and we like to save them and do them in a special video edition of Mark's Mailbox. A few days ago, it was International Pronouns Day. Are you up on this pronoun thing? Everyone's making a big thing about pronouns now. The Democrat presidential candidates are doing them. Elizabeth Warren rather ostentatiously declared her pronouns in the debate recently, and I think in the debate before that, Kamala Harris also declared her pronouns. She said her pronouns were she, her, and hers, at which point Andrew Cuomo of CNN said mine too. And I took him seriously. I quite believe he used female pronouns, because he got very angry when he was called Fredo and threatened to beat someone up. Actually, let's have a little bit of that clip. I always enjoy that.
I'll wreck your shit. I'll wreck your shit.
Stop.
You didn't know what you were doing when you
thought it was your name, man.
Isn't that terrific? That's Andrew Cuomo getting mad because someone called him Fredo when he uses the female pronoun, so obviously it'd be Frida. Anyway, he had to. I think he had to back down and apologize for that. Anyway, the pronouns are a big thing, and in fact, Deputy Chief Constable Julie Cook of the Cheshire Constabulary in England. Deputy Chief Constable is what they call in America a deputy police chief. She issued this special greeting, such as it is, for International Pronouns Day.
Today is International Pronouns Day, which is a day particularly important to people who identify as transgender or gender non-conforming. Being misgendered can have a huge impact on somebody and their personal well-being. It also can be used as a form of abuse for somebody, and that just isn't right. Today is about raising awareness, getting people to have conversations, and understanding why it is so important to understand the pronouns that somebody wishes to be used for them. Have a good day.
Yeah. There's a kind of implied threat behind that when someone is wishing you a happy pronouns day while standing in front of the badge of the Cheshire Constabulary. Before I say anything else on that, the best point about these pronouns, the most basic point about this pronoun fever that's gripping the land is by Sol. And Sol says, if you're talking directly to someone, do you use a pronoun other than you? And that's absolutely true. If you meet someone, you don't have to know what pronouns they use, because when you're addressing them, you just use you. You say, do you happen to know what time it is? Could you tell me what the soup of the day is? Do you know the way to San Jose? You don't need to know whether they're him, she, they, she, je, or whatever any of these other pronouns are. I was appreciative of that point. I don't like it when the state well, let's look at it in basic terms. Policing falls under the heading of quote-unquote law enforcement. So my question to DCC Julie Cook is, what law are you actually enforcing here? There's no law yet mandating the use of certain pronouns, obliging you to defer to someone's preferred choice of pronouns. So when you purport to attach state power to International Pronouns Day, you're going rather farther than your remit would appear to suggest. Obviously, I can understand why, if you're the entirely useless British Constabulary, you're one of the most contemptible institutions in the Western world, utterly useless, who've allowed their young maidenhood, such as it is in the United Kingdom, to be sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism in Rotherham and Telford and Rochdale and Oxford and all these other cities to these so-called grooming gangs. If you have an epidemic of knife crime, stalking the country such that you have to make stupid promotions in which people purport to be knife-free. If you happen, in fact, to be the number 2 police officer in the county of Cheshire, where violent crime is up 50% year on year, you've got over 3,000 violent crimes a month, I can well understand why you'd just rather make stupid promotional videos about your pronouns. But I do like what Walt Trimmer wrote. Walt Trimmer said, "It's time to stockpile conventional pronouns for the coming apocalypse. The worst that can happen is that they will go unused and be passed down to your heirs. They can have a good laugh at Grandma and Grandpa's quaint pronouns. The smart progeny will sell them on eBay for a fortune." As well they might, Walt. So we now have the, I can't stand the woke constabulary. As I said when this came up originally, I preferred the old school bent coppers to the woke coppers. Now they're bent and woke. There's something unpleasantly coercive about the entirely useless British constabulary now threatening to add one more useless, fake, invented crime that they pursue far more zealously than anything that matters. And I will close with respect to DCC Cook's hideous message with my old line, "In Britain, everything is policed except crime," and pronouns are merely the latest example. Chris Hall says, "I see that President Obama on Twitter endorsed Justin Trudeau while still not endorsing Joe Biden. Is this foreign election meddling or just another case of racial solidarity?" That's a reference to the fact that Barack Obama is America's first black president and Justin Trudeau is Canada's first blackface prime minister, or the prime minstrel, as we like to say. And he's the world's wokest mammy singer. It's very impressive. Chris Hall says that Obama endorsed Justin Trudeau because he's a brother. What's the expression? He's a brother from another mother. Or in Justin Trudeau's case, he's actually a brother from another mammy. Mammy! We love the way Justin Trudeau has single-handedly brought back all the mammy songs. I can't wait to hear him do Come Mr. What's it called? The Banana Boat song, Deo, at the next Liberal Party conference, and for him to invite all the ladies present to tally his banana. It'd be a lovely scene. Marie says, "Did you see the tweets from Tom Hardwood at the Guido Fawkes website in the United Kingdom that Justin Trudeau had enjoyed skinny dipping with staffers as a young MP? One wonder how he identified during the episode, as he appears to change quite frequently." Well, that's the interesting thing about a young Justin, is people call it blackface because, generally speaking, you just used to black your face. You'd have like oversized bow ties and white gloves for all the rest of the mammy singing. And what we know from Justin's, whatever it is now, 4 extant videos of his blackface routines without number, he can't reliably put a number on them, is he doesn't do blackface. He'll just blackface. He blacks his hands, he blacks his arms, he blacks his legs. He was wearing torn jeans. You could see through the tears that he'd blacked his legs. So we don't actually know, except if you're one of those staffers who gets to go skinny dipping with him, whether he actually gets the old boot polish and applies it to everything, as it were. Michelle Dulac says, "Hi Mark, I have an unmissable appointment this afternoon. But here goes with my question. Why are so many people linking Brexit and Trump to one another, and both to racism, the alt-right, etc.? Trump can at least be made to sort of kind of fit if seen at a very particular angle in uncertain light, though under no circumstances will I believe that there are 63 million neo-Nazis in the US, a good many of whom voted for Obama before they voted for Trump. But Brexit? Britain has racial, or rather race-religious problems, see Rotherham, etc., but they have nothing to do with the EU. The only beef the Brits appear to have with intra-EU migration is the influx of poor but white Eastern Europeans into places that already have high unemployment. And yet the actual reasons for hating the EU are all flattened into one with the American sort of racism and stamped alt-right. I suppose the common link is really nationalism, and that puts me in a bind because I'm a nationalist, by which I just mean that I like nations. The more and the more varied, the better. It's rather hard being a nationalist in the US, but we have got states, and please God, they remain different from one another. I get the impression that the left these days wants states to be as much the same as possible. Little administrative departments for doing the hard stuff like levying taxes, but otherwise indistinguishable. Is it in fact possible to want the contrary without being painted a white supremacist? Is there really only the war of all against all and the world state with nothing between? Short answer to that, Michelle, is yes. One of the reasons they lump these things together is because they're globalists and they're making plans for the world. And one consequence of being a globalist is you tend to look at these little local variations and think they're irrelevant and that the entire world is all the same. So Trump is the same as Brexit, and Brexit is the same as Viktor Orban in Hungary, and Viktor Orban in Hungary is the same as Ukraine, where they just elected a comedian who used to star in a comedy in which he plays a guy, I think he's a high school teacher who manages to get elected president. And then through being in a comedy about a nobody who gets elected president, the guy got elected president. And for the globalists, it's convenient to just like think everything is all the same. That's one of the reasons why they like globalism. You remember Henry Kissinger's famous line, "If I want to call Europe, who do I call?" Because he had a Rolodex and it had a number for France, it had a number for Germany, and it had a number for the Netherlands, had a number for Italy, had a number for Spain, had a number for... And he found all this a bit inconvenient. So obviously from Henry Kissinger's point of view, if you can just call 1-800-EUROPE, that saves Henry a lot of time. And likewise from the European Union's point of view, after they'd all come together, they were in favour of what John Bolton very amusingly described to me on Fox one night as the European unionization of the world. This was years ago. They're planning the European unionization of the world. And we all had a good laugh about it, and it turns out they actually are planning the European unionization of the world. The only thing these things have in common is that people are dissatisfied with the choices. So that if you're faced, as you are in many Western democracies these days, between a candidate who's left of centre and a candidate who's ever so slightly right of left of centre, you're not really arguing about anything important. The Canadian election campaign, happily concluded, was almost a parodic version of that. There were 6 parties, of which 5 were all parties of the left, variants of the left. You had the soft left, which is the Conservatives. The Conservatives under Andrew Scheer didn't run on any kind of conservative platform. They ran as a soft left party. Whenever anything came up that sounded conservative, they couldn't wait to put clear blue water between the conservative policy and the soft left party. So conservative soft left. You had hard left, which is the NDP, the dippers, as they say in Canada. Not the skinny dippers, that's Justin when he's got the full boot polish on with his staffers. The NDP as the hard left. You had the crony left. That's Justin and all the pals he's sluicing money to, like the SNC Lavalin thing. You have the eco-left in the Green Party, and you have the secessionist left in the Bloc Québécois. They all basically agree on 95% of everything. Government, whatever ails you, government is the solution. And the only one party Standing against that was Maxime Bernier's People's Party. Otherwise, it's like 5 variants of the left. And elsewhere around the world, in Italy, in Austria, in Hungary, people are saying, no, we want a slightly wider choice than that. That's what they said in the United States and the United Kingdom in 2016 with Trump and Brexit. And that's really all these things have in common. I do think, by the way, on the immigration thing, that people are concerned about immigration. And it's not particularly anything to do with whether you want Somalis and Yemenis or you want Poles and Latvians. But you want to actually be able to decide that issue for yourself. And the fact of the matter is that Angela Merkel taught a lesson to everyone in Europe that in the end, people want, where they're all having meetings, Angela Merkel is basically saying, I've asked everyone from Syria to come and live in Germany, but we'd like you to take some of the surplus, because we've got all the Syrians we need now, so why don't you take a few of them? And the understanding that one way to get control of your borders back is to do it as a nation state. Now, the globalists are not happy with people seeking wider choices. They like generally, the narrower the turf that elections are fought on, the more it suits them. And so one thing we've seen is that if you want anything different, you must be a racist or you must be a white supremacist. So you say, Michelle, you don't see what being a nationalist has to do with being a racist or being a white supremacist. But the point is questioning anything other than the multicultural orthodoxy of the post-World War II Western world puts you in the white supremacist category. If you happen to think that Britain should not be a member of the European Union, you must be a racist. You must be a hater. You must be a guy just itching to perpetrate a hate crime. Likewise, if you think that the United States ought to have a southern border, you must also be a racist. You must be a white supremacist. In fact, if, like my friend Tucker Carlson, you take Michelle's line and you think there can't surely be 63 million white supremacists in America, can there? That seems awfully high. And if, like Tucker, you dispute that there is any such thing as a widespread mass white supremacist movement, simply disputing it is in fact a sign that you're a white supremacist. Just like questioning whether Islamophobia is a thing is a sign that you are in the final stages of virulent Islamophobia. The point about all this is to take things that should be in the normal course of public policy. Birthright citizenship, for example. America has birthright citizenship. If you can get here and you're 8.5 months pregnant and deliver the baby here, that baby is a US citizen as surely as if her ancestors had come over on the Mayflower. That's actually very unusual. But the left wants to be able to say that if you question birthright citizenship, you're a racist and white supremacist. In that case, Ireland is full of racists and white supremacists because they don't have birthright citizenship. And France is full of racists and white supremacists because they don't have birthright citizenship. And Australia is full of racists and white supremacists because they don't have birthright citizenship. And Scandinavia and all the social democracies the left purports to admire. So that's the only real thing they have in common, is that if you now have the ever such a slight, if you say the mildest thing, if you say, well, of course, I'm all in favor of legal immigration. I agree with President Trump when he said we're going to build a wall and have a big, beautiful door in it for everyone to come through legally. But I am a bit concerned. I'm just a bit concerned about gangs trafficking and sex slaving young girls and women and raping them in order to bring them across the Rio Grande in the express check-in. If you express just a slight queasiness about incentivizing sex trafficking on the southern border, which is why maybe we actually do need to have an enforceable southern border. Well, you're a racist and a white supremacist, and there's no doubt about it. And that's the only purpose of these slurs, these labels. A label saves the guys on the left from having to debate you on these issues. So the earlier the label kicks in, the better. So we're defining racism down, so they had to invent white supremacism as a replacement, because racism had been defined so far down it had become an utterly meaningless term. And so they came up with white supremacism, and they're now defining that down, and then they'll find something else. But these are public policy differences, and you should be able to talk about them as public policy. Dominic says, hi Mark, I traveled in East Asia, Japan, recently and loved it. As many visitors have noted, Japan and other East Asian countries are safe and have low crime rates. Strolling around Tokyo at night, something I wouldn't advise doing in many parts of, say, Sydney or Melbourne, I couldn't help but reflect upon the following. So much of Western countries' economic activity are dependent upon crime prevention, security, police, etc., and also the infrastructure of social workers, lawyers, psychologists, etc., to try and remedy social breakdown. My point is this: could the economies of the West survive East Asian crime rates? Well, I get the point you're making, Dominic. You know, one reason that people talk about, say, the complicated tax code in America, and it's fantastically complicated. So if you're, say, a waitress at the local diner who also happens to do a bit of part-time house cleaning, you've got to go and see a professional accountant to get your taxes done. So every little town that can no longer support a gas station and a general store or even a church nevertheless has a shingle on Main Street saying H&R Block and a local franchise for the accountant there who can do your taxes. And when the accountancy lobby is that big, it's very hard to actually, obviously there's nothing for them in simplifying the tax code. And that works with a lot of the issues that beset us today. In fact, our response to 9/11. Mrs. Thatcher's great line was, if you set up a bureaucracy specifically to address a problem, you'll never be rid of the problem. And so we have the Department of Homeland Security. It's why I oppose the creation of that. And then we have all the attendant things, because we don't have, the big difference between Japan and other developed nations is that Japan has minimal immigration. It takes its borders seriously. It takes its citizenship seriously. It just doesn't give it away to anyone who can get there. And if you have a border, and that border is seriously enforced, there's less and less to do inside the border. So if you don't have a big national border, you wind up what we now have in America and in Australia, borders around everything inside the country. You have borders around buildings. You have borders around sporting events. You have borders around airports. You have to have all this stuff because you don't have one big border on the perimeter, so you've got to have borders, you know, so they blow up, they break into a gay nightclub and some guy kills a bunch of people there, so it's, oh, well, we need to have better security at gay nightclubs. We have bollards everywhere now. And that's the thing now. If you think about it, the solution, a guy goes up on the bike path in New York and mows down a bunch. These people, this vehicular jihad, which is when an SUV becomes radicalized. It's a terrible thing. You can have a lot of SUVs that are perfectly moderate. And then the SUV starts going to a radical mosque and becomes radicalized. And next thing you know, that voice that tells you to put on your seatbelt is instead saying Allahu Akbar, and the radicalized Jeep Cherokee has ridden up onto the sidewalk and is mowing people down. And so the solution to that is either to ban SUVs or, until they can do that, put bollards everywhere. These ugly things now you have to prevent cars riding up onto the sidewalk, mowing down people at Christmas markets in Germany or whatever. You think about it now. You imagine being the guy who's got the bollard concession. I don't even know who's behind bollards, but it's like a whole industry now. Big bollard, big bollard. There's bollards everywhere. Bollards around everything that matters in the entire Western world. Big bollard. Who controls big bollard? Is it a monopoly? Can we break up the monopoly? Is it Zuckerberg or is it one of these big industrialists? Is it George Soros behind all the bollards? But whoever's got the bollard concession for the Western world, that's got to be like 40% of the economy in some of these places. And it would be a lot simpler to do as the Japanese do. But somehow that's never, ever addressed, is it? And somehow the response to 9/11, which indicated that certain persons from certain parts of the world might be proving trickier to assimilate than certain others, the solution to that was in fact to double the rate of immigration from that part of the world to the Western world. And so we have bollards as a growth industry in our economy. And it's bonkers, but apparently doing anything to change any of that, I think they should just issue them at birth. When you emerge into the maternity ward, they should just issue you with your personal set of bollards all around you that you can grow into and wear for the rest of your life. Sooner or later, they'll actually discover a way to fit the bollard onto you, and then we'll all be safe, won't we? And on that cheery note, thank you for your comments. We love to hear from you. We're doing some live events for Mark Steyn Club members in November and hope to see you there. And we will see you back here very soon. See you next time.